Hi everyone, good evening and welcome to the BTB Wall of Fame author chat series on Beyond the Box. Now today I'm super excited to talk to an amazing woman, but before I introduce her, I just want to tell you all what this initiative is about and why actually I came up with the idea of an initiative like this. So this year when the lockdown happened, of course, like many, even we had stopped operations temporarily, and when we resumed online, I wanted to also revamp some of our earlier initiatives. And I had realized that working so closely with children, I realized that they somewhere have this feeling that authors are people they cannot reach out to, or it's like, I mean, they feel that distance. So I thought, why not give an opportunity to children to actually hear from the authors they love and interact with them, learn from them. And that's how the idea of BTB Wall of Fame came about. So every month we celebrate an author we love, and of course, as you all already know from our page updates, that our author of the month for July is Manjiri Prabhu, who is an amazing person. Let me just, I mean, I'm sure you all have read about her on our post, but she is so inspiring that I have to talk about what she does and her achievements. So, Dr. Manjiri Prabhu holds a doctorate in communication science and is an independent filmmaker for television, a writer novelist in English, and also the founder director of a literary festival. She has directed over 200 children's TV programs, more than 50 short fiction and travel films, and has authored more than 11 books. Her unpublished psychological thriller novel was adapted into a Hindi feature film by NFDC titled Kuch Dil Ne Kaha. Her thesis, converted into a book titled Rules, Real and Real, has become a rare reference book for students of Hindi cinema. She has been acknowledged as a pioneer in India among women writers of mystery fiction, and she has a diverse global fan following, and we are definitely among that fan following. She's also the first female mystery author to be published outside India and has been labeled as the Desi Agatha Christie. And much recently, she has been acknowledged to be a match for Dan Brown by Dr. Shashi Tharoor. She has been invited to reputed international literature festivals like the Agatha Christie Festival, UK, and International Women Fiction Writers, Italy. Her novels, The Cosmic Clues, was selected as a killer book by independent mystery booksellers of America. And she has won so many awards, and what I love the most about her, that after all this, she's such a humble and warm person. So let me not waste any more time and get her live with us so that we can know more about her journey and learn from us. Hello, ma'am, and thank you so much for agreeing to be a part of Beyond the Box, for associating with us, and for taking our time for this chat.
My pleasure. It's a great pleasure being here. I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, we too. And a lot of kids are as well, who have read your book. But of course, we will talk about that later. So I want to begin by asking you that, of course, you have such a huge body of work. But when was that first time in your life when you wrote a creative piece? It could be even as a child, it could be something small. But do you remember when was the first time you wrote a creative piece?
I think one thing that I remember very clearly and right from the beginning is that I always wanted to be a writer. So I knew
Oh,
at age 7, yes, of course, at age 7, I knew that if there was one thing I was sure of in my life, it was that I wanted to be a writer. And so from 7 onwards, I was, and this was mostly because of all the Enid Blyton books I read. She's my
right.
spirit mentor. And so I just read all her books and I fell in love with her characters. And I wanted to create, her kind of atmosphere, the happy go lucky, fun,
Right.
adventurous atmosphere
Right.
where
Yes.
everything ends very nicely in the end. So those were the kind of books I wanted to write. So those were the kind of books I started writing because I think my first book, if I remember, was about 4 children stranded on an island. So, and as I wrote, so it was like obviously a huge
Yes.
influence of Enid Blyton on
Right.
me. And yeah, so that's what I wrote, and I used to I was so crazy about writing and seeing my books, seeing my stories turn into books, not published books, but my own books that I used to cut out,
Okay, wonderful.
those papers
Okay.
and staple
Ha ha
them
ha.
together and read it, and then everyone in my family had to read my book and then tell me that the story is really good. So I remember very well what I wrote and how I wrote and how I landed up here today.
That's wonderful, man. That's so nice to know. And it's interesting that as of now, some of the kids at Beyond the Box are also doing something similar, like that creating their own mini books.
Yeah.
And so when you mentioned that, I thought that it's really wonderful to, I mean, publishing is of course a different thing, but to have that
Yeah.
mini book can be so special of your own. Of course, so since you mentioned that you always wanted to become an author, but actually becoming a professional writer, how was that journey? Of course, I'm sure there might have been hurdles and challenges. So could you just share about how it happened, and what were the challenges that you faced in your journey? And again, I mean, not to be biased, but at times, did you feel that as a woman, again, were there some different kind of challenges that you faced? Because we all know that yes, there are some stereotypes we have with respect to women writers, especially. How was your experience?
Well, when I first got published, that was in 94, it was really smooth sailing for me. I did not
Okay.
have any problem. I had some manuscripts ready. Rupa and Company wanted to bring out a Mills and Boon kind of a Rupa publication romance series in India. I submitted my book. It got selected. So the first two books were really very easy. I think the trouble started after that
Okay.
because, yeah, because after that, I realized that no matter what I wrote,
Okay.
getting published was getting more and more difficult. And that is something I'm
Mhm.
sure every writer faces.
Right.
Like you said, hurdles. I think there are two main hurdles in publishing for any writer, especially for me. Is one is getting published, because even if I've written so many books and I may have some kind of credibility, every new book that I write faces the same journey over and over again. So
Right.
it's like a blank page, and you have to start all over looking for a publisher, and that journey is pretty traumatic, I think, sometimes. Having said that, it's a great pleasure being published, of course. The second hurdle happens when the book is published and it has to reach your
Right.
readers. And so, depending on what you write, for example, I write for a niche market, and that's mystery lovers. And reaching mystery lovers in India can be quite how should I say, it could be a journey in itself. Yes. And I'm not a
Right.
marketing person, and
Hmm.
the whole marketing and whole the post production part of a book is really very tiring, trying, and
Hmm.
it
I
it
understand.
needs a whole
Yes.
different kind of skill set, I feel. So I think those are the two main hurdles that I have found: getting published, and then after it's published, then finding the readers for that, because it's not easy, let me tell you that.
Yes, yes, yes. True, true, true. I am sure many writers would relate to, especially, the post publishing part of it, when you actually have to
Yes.
market, because in
Yes.
essence, writers, they love to write, that is what gives the
Yes.
high. And of course, that
Yeah.
becomes more of a, so yes, I'm
Yeah.
sure that was a challenge.
And
I would just want
I
to,
was a pretty old fashioned writer. I still am.
okay,
I when I started writing, there was barely anyone writing popular fiction in English, and very few women also. And so I always believe that a writer should write, and then the publisher should take on the next part of the book.
correct, true,
But
true.
then I came back to writing after a gap, because I was a television producer in between. And when I came back to
Yes,
writing again, everything had changed. Writers were expected to be spokespersons, marketers, writers, and businessmen, and then I was like completely lost. I didn't know where I was and what I was caught in. Of course, I adapted, because you can't help but adapt. But yes,
right.
the publishing scene had changed considerably since the first time I started writing to now.
Okay, right, right. It definitely has evolved in many ways.
Yeah.
So I would just like to tell the audience that if you have any questions for ma'am, please do post in the comments. And at the end of the session, according to the time, we will definitely take up a few questions. Actually, I mean, of course, the journey, I'm sure, has been fulfilling in many ways. And I'm sure you must have had a lot of moments of, the highs. Is there any one moment in particular which you distinctly remember when you felt that I'm so glad I'm doing this? Because, in whatever path we choose, of course, there are multiple such moments, but something which particularly, made you feel really happy about choosing this path.
Well, yes, like you said, there are many moments, but I'd like to
Right.
mention two, if you let me.
Yes,
One
of course.
is when the Cosmic Clues came out in 2004. It came out in the US first, and it came to India a little later, because at that point, so they were published by Random House USA. And at that
Okay.
time, there was no Random House in India. So when Random House came to India, that a year later, the books came to India. And there was this lady who
Oh,
called me up from Lucknow. I still remember. She was, I don't want to go too much into details, but she was going through a lot of depression, and she kept calling me up repeatedly for a year because she kept reading my books, and she went back to the book time and time again just to get over her depression. And I think she told me that the books kind of saved her. So for me, that was really special because I felt that I write for myself most of the times. And when you write for yourself and you love your work and it goes out and helps someone else, then
right.
for me, that's a very, very
True.
special occasion. So
Yes,
that
indeed.
was something very special for me. The other moment which I felt was very thrilling for me was when I'd been to the US for a festival this November. I just happened to go into the San Francisco Public Library, and my husband was with me, said, "Why don't you go check if your books are there?" I said, "No, no, not possible. The books won't be there." So I went to the mystery section, and lo behold, I saw my two books
Wow.
there, Cosmic Clues and Astral Lullaby, and I just looked at them, and it was like meeting family in a foreign country. And I just looked at
I
them and I
know.
held them and
That
I
must
literally
have been so
cried
exciting.
because of the joy of it, you know. So
Yeah,
yes, at that point I felt, oh my God, thank God I'm a writer, and thank God I can experience
right.
this. And it was a beautiful moment. Yeah.
Indeed, it's so exciting. I mean, I can just only imagine how it must have felt. That's
Yeah.
really amazing. So you have also been invited to international literary festivals, I guess, right? So
Yeah.
now, of course, that's a huge honor. Could you just share a little bit about your experience and whether there were some takeaways from those experiences which you remember even today, like any kind of learning experience? How was it?
Well, yeah, I've been to about, I think, three international festivals.
Wow. Okay.
One was the International Agatha Christie Festival, which was in celebration of her 125th birthday. And it
Okay.
was such a huge honor to be there, to see her birthday cake being cut and to read from her stories and to be a part of that whole community who loved Agatha Christie and to talk about my
I know.
experiences. And
Right.
also, it was absolutely special being there and to meet her grandson, who was for me a
Wow.
celebrity. Because yeah, so
Amazing.
that was a very special moment for me. Then I went to the International Women's Festival in Italy, in Matera, where I presented a kind of a it was a presentation on Indian publishing. And I realized there that everyone world over is very curious about the Indian market. They feel that we have
Okay.
such a huge population and an English reading population, so the kind of
Mhm.
sales must be very huge. So they're very keen and interested in tapping our
Nice.
market. So there were a
Okay.
lot of interactions which I really enjoyed. And thirdly, like I was saying, I went to the world's biggest mystery convention, which is called BoucherCon. And I
Wow.
was there in
Okay.
its 50th year in November on a panel. And that was so amazing because, you know, I'd been published in the US in 2004 and 2006. But when I went there, I met bookstore holders, I mean, bookstore people. I met readers who had come there specially to listen to me because they'd read my books way back in 2004 and 2006. And the bookstore people told me, "We remember you. There was a lot of demand for your books." And you can't imagine what it feels like when you go across the seven seas to a country which is not
True.
your own and
True.
people tell you they remember your books. And I met a lot of authors. I realized that these conventions are a hub of total creativity. You meet like-minded people. There were about 2,000 authors there, and imagine 2,000 mystery authors in
Amazing.
one place.
I
In
know.
India, you'd barely
Wow.
find
That
10,
must have been
10,
like one
15.
mystery party.
Yes, it was. And they support each other. It's a big community, and they really
Amazing.
boost each other. It's a great feeling to be a part of it. So I realized
Great.
that festivals or writing and everything has to go beyond all of this into and form a kind of community, because after all, writers have to be with writers and support each other.
True, true. And that's very
Yeah,
interesting. You've shared some really interesting anecdotes
yeah,
there, I think, because, like, especially, when you spoke about how they are interested in the Indian market, I think that was something,
yes,
even I was not aware of that. So
yeah,
that's pretty
yeah,
interesting to know. Before I move on to my next question, I'll just, so we have a question from Richa. So first, she
yeah.
said that two of my favorite ladies. So thank you so much for that compliment, Richa. So she's asking that I love that you're a versatile writer. Writers are often influenced and inspired by what they consume as content. Do you surround yourself with relevant stimulus every time you're writing a particular genre, and how much does it help you?
Yeah, so basically, I'm a mystery author. So I'm
Yes.
all the subgenres of mystery I try, psychological
Right.
noir, thrillers. So it's basically that. I did venture away from the mystery genre in when I wrote the dystopian, my first dystopian, but that also had a mystery element in it. So,
Okay.
Richa, thanks for your question, by the way. I don't necessarily surround myself because I think I've done, sometimes I feel I've done a lot of reading. And I think that reading has really gone somewhere into my subconscious and it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there are a lot of offshoots of all that reading and which I've already converted into plots in my head. So I know
Right.
what I want to write next. Know what I want to write next, and I know what I want to write next. But I don't necessarily read that genre when I'm writing because I don't want to be influenced, like she said, influenced by any outside stimuli when I'm trying to create something from within. So, well, I don't do
That's
that when I'm writing
that's
for
a
sure.
valid point. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a very valid point that you've said. And I think, yeah, it's important to strike that balance, I guess. You don't
Yes.
need to
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's great. And we have another comment from Tina Sequera. She says, "This is awesome. So nice to hear Manjiri Prabhu and you live. Thank you so much, Tina." Okay, so now since we are at Beyond the Box, and of course, Beyond the Box is primarily all about kids, and there are kids who are watching us. Now, of course, so I must tell you this that Mystery at Malabar Cottage is loved by everybody at Beyond the Box. Of course, I have read the book too, and of course, I mean, I sometimes don't. I mean, I am somebody who generally doesn't say that this book is for children or adults. I read anything. Sometimes I'm actually even reading the books which I've got for my 5.5-year-old. So I personally enjoy reading any kind of book. So we all did read the book, and we discussed it. We also had one of our students review the book a few days back, which you must have read. So
I read
I
it.
wanted
Yeah.
to know that how did the idea of the book come to your mind? Like, what is it that triggered? Sometimes a small thing just triggers an idea. So how did this book happen?
But so if you remember, I said my first book about was about four children being stranded on an island. Okay, so
Yes,
this
yes.
book is actually the same book, but I'll tell you how it happened. So as a child, so we were all avid readers of Enid Blyton books, and we are we are five siblings, like four sisters and one brother, and we had a mystery club. We had a secret club, and our code word was Golden Eagle. So we used to go out on the street and follow people, suspicious looking people. And my mom
Wow.
used to lay a treasure hunt for us. So we used to go, and she used
Okay.
to leave like marks with twigs on the road or some markings on the branch. And so we were all mystery lovers, and we used to really enact that love, in these treasure hunts. So that, of course, was how should I say, the foundation for all my mystery love. But this book that I talked about is about cousins. And my whole intention in writing this book with cousins and not friends was to bring about an importance of family. Because we are all always about friends, friends, friends. We are not really always
Right.
about family, 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 especially at that age. That age, friends are
Yes,
more
yes,
important.
of course.
So I wanted to bring about this love for family in it. I wanted to bring about the mystery element. I wanted to bring about that all's well that ends well in in the end, that feeling in it. So, 1 second, yeah, sorry. There was a
No, no,
so
yeah,
uh,
that's
so so this story came to be much before, when I almost like I wrote it when I was a child.
wow. So that's pretty interesting to know. I'm sure the kids who are watching would be, they might have enjoyed knowing about how it happened. Because,
Yes.
once you read and enjoy a book, it's always good to know the backstory of it. So now every writer has a unique writing process. Now, if you ask me as a writer, honestly, I do not have a fixed process. Sometimes something works and sometimes something works. So in your case, is there a particular approach you take to writing, like any particular process you follow? And also, like, when you write for adults versus when you write for kids, how does that approach change, or whether it changes at all?
Well, for a process, I haven't really consciously gone out and created a process for myself. But
Right.
with every book, I realize that I automatically follow a process. And the process
Mm-hmm.
is that first I need to think of the characters. And the characters usually come to me in my dreams or when I'm walking, but it's mostly in my dreams.
Right.
And once I see the character, the plot automatically, develops around that character. So
Right.
when that happens, then I like to sit down and write out the entire plot, because I'm writing mystery novels. I don't want to leave anything to chance, and I don't want to leave anything to doubt. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
make sure that my plot is clear. I need to know who's done it in the end. Then once I know who's done it, I work backwards from
Right.
there, because I
Right.
want to keep the element of surprise alive, throughout the book
Exactly.
for the readers.
Yes.
I want them
Yes.
to be surprised at the end. I want to deceive them, and at the same time, I want them to be happy that they're deceived. So,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, so writing
That's
a
a
mystery
challenge
novel is
too.
very tricky. Yeah, it's very tricky, and it does require certain kind of expertise, I feel,
Hmm.
like more than the other novels, because there is a kind of a plot to it. There are characters to it. Something has to lead from one point to the other point without arousing any suspicion in the mind of the reader, yet take the reader from point A to point Z in a very satisfactory manner. So when all this is involved, I like to, I'm sorry I'm being so technical,
No,
but
no, no, no,
that's
no,
how
no.
my,
I,
so, so I like to lay down my plot. And then once I lay down my plot, I start writing. So I
yeah.
need to know who's done it. I don't change it
Yes.
along the
Yes.
way.
Yes, and I think this actually really, proves the point that a lot of the process really depends on what you're writing as well, right? Like, since in your case
Yeah,
you said that because it's mystery, you need to kind of go backward. I
yeah,
mean, so yeah,
yeah,
it really depends so much on what we are writing, and that does define it. There's a question
yeah,
from Natasha Perry Thomas. She's asking, how long generally does it take for you to write a book?
yeah. It takes me about 6 months for a book.
6 months.
I mean,
Okay.
so my first draft happens in 3 months, but then I need another 3 months to take a break from the draft, sit back, do other stuff, and then I go back to it, and I take about another month or two to really bring it in shape. I
Right.
do very little editing when I'm writing my first draft. I just write it,
Yes.
and then take
Yes.
a break, and then go back and start the
Then
editing.
revisit.
Yeah.
Yep.
So 6 months, more or less.
Is more or less okay. That's pretty fair. Okay,
Yeah.
so now that so there are a lot of not just kids but adult writers as well who have recently begun writing, watching us, and so what tips or suggestions would you give to them with respect to how they can hone their craft? I mean, there could be very simple tips sometimes which, when followed regularly, can help with your writing technique skills. So from your side, what are those tips or suggestions based on your experience do you think would really help them to hone their craft?
Well, I mean, there are lots, like I said to you before, there's lots of advice on the internet, and there are lots of
True.
advice
Of
that's
course.
coming. So,
Yes.
yes, so, and I'm sure the authors already know a lot because everyone's experimenting. I'm going to
True.
say first, number one, I'm going to say, write what you're comfortable writing first.
Hmm.
Okay. I
Hmm.
know that a journey is normally, from known to unknown. So start with what you know. Okay. And then go on to unknown. Of course,
That's
you're brave
very
enough to
good
start with
advice.
something. Yeah, you
Right. That's
can, of
very
course,
good advice.
experiment and write, but
Hmm.
first, to hone your craft, write what you know about. And I'm
Right.
sure you're going to enjoy the process. You love what you're writing, and you'll create a good product. The second thing is, like I've already said, love what you write. That comes in it. The
Yes.
second thing is that you need to commit to yourself. This is not a commitment that you do to a publisher, to your friend, to your parent. This is a commitment to yourself. And this commitment is very, very important, because you are responsible for what you write and what you bring out in the world. Even if it is fiction, it is still you representing that fiction. So it is very important that every word you write is relevant to what you want to write. And that requires a great deal of commitment, a great deal of, like everyone says, writing is 1% inspiration, 90%, 99% perspiration. And so if you're going to
Yes.
sit,
Yes.
you need to sit for 6 months for me, maybe 3 months for somebody else, but you need to sit with yourself, your thoughts, your characters, your imagination for a certain period of time, and that needs discipline and commitment. Discipline is also possible, but commitment for me is more important, because you
Yeah.
need to commit to yourself that you're going to bring out something really great in the world. So that's
Right.
the second thing. The third thing is, of course, I mean, if you know you're supposed to read a lot in life, so you know what's been written
Yeah.
already. There's no point rehashing and bringing out the same thing again and again in different forms. Try to be original. Being original is very difficult, because almost everything is being done in the world.
Exactly. True. True.
So
True.
you need to be original, and if you're original, people will definitely notice you. You don't need gimmicks to be noticed. Then
True.
uh, what else? Yeah, I mean, you have to just be at it. Don't fear rejections, because rejections are something, everybody knows rejections are opportunities to do better. But sometimes if you're rejected, I've been rejected hundreds of times and I've taken it very poorly. And that's why I can tell you that you need to rise above the rejections, because ultimately you need to believe in yourself.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just that your manuscript does not go to the right publisher. Maybe they already
Right.
have something. Maybe your work isn't good enough. Also, you have to consider that. Okay, so you go back
Yes.
and you revisit and you revamp and redo things. But ultimately, you need to believe in yourself, and so do
Yeah.
not take rejections to heart. It's just like you might be eating a dish that your mom has cooked for you and you may not like it, because maybe your stomach's already full, or or you're not in the mood to have anything sweet,
Yes.
or you've
True.
already had pani puri or want to eat pani puri. So just think of all this. Just it's the same thing. The publisher needs a pani puri and you're probably giving him a sweet dish, that kind of a thing. So do not take
Correct.
rejections to heart. Use them well, in fact, and believe in yourself. I think that's about it.
Yes, I think this last point especially is so important because I think that
Yeah,
also keeps that hunger going to write better, to
yes,
learn
yeah,
more,
yeah,
and to do
yeah,
better. So that's
yeah,
taking rejections, I believe, should actually it is something that all writers should kind of brace ourselves for. We should learn to take it in a positive stride.
yeah.
So that's a very valid point
So
that you've made there.
basically, you need to be thick-skinned if you want to be a writer.
Right, I
Thick-skinned,
agree completely.
selfish and thick-skinned both. You want
Yeah.
to be a writer, you need to keep aside everything that you're doing and just write. No matter what the world says, and no matter what the world calls you, and no matter what your family says, or your husband says, or spouse says, or whatever, you just have to be selfish and give yourself that time to write. And thick-skinned, because no matter how well you write, there are going to be some people who won't like your work. Apart from the rejections, I'm saying once the book
Yes.
comes out, it could be criticized, it could be people would trash it, for all you know. You just have to be ready for everything and just go on, move on to the next book, because that's what's waiting for you now.
Yeah, true. Very true. There's a question from Natasha, and I think this is a very, it's an important question actually. What do you think makes a good story? Because I think this is something which a lot of writers sometimes, like, we say that write for yourself, but at the same time, you also need to write something which people may enjoy reading. So I think it's important to have some kind of an understanding of what really makes a good story. So what's your take on that?
Well, I've always had this one goal in life, and that
Yes.
is that I want to live on in the life of readers, in their memory forever, through my characters. So I want to live on in the lives of all readers, wherever, whoever reads my book, in the form of characters. So I think a good story is one that stays with the reader long after the book is closed, gone, and kept in some corner of the thing. The book is forgotten, but the story isn't forgotten. And I think that is what makes a good story: memorable characters, placing it in an atmosphere of, how should I say, not just the plot, and I mean, not, it's not just the story I'm talking about, but also placing that plot in an atmosphere which will make it come alive.
Right.
So that whole surroundings, the entire equations of characters with characters with the backdrops, characters with the way the story progresses, everything brought together makes a story come alive. The research,
Yes.
how you bring out the research. So there are so many elements to a good story, but when I combine all this together, there's just one thing that I remember, that your story has to be remembered long after it's over. So whatever it needs, you need to do to make and to ensure that it stays on in the minds of the reader forever. I think that's what makes a good story.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think each
I
person will
agree.
have their own formula. Each
Of
writer
course.
will have their own formula to do this. It's all comes with trial and error. I personally don't believe that writing can be taught. Honestly, I really feel it's an instinctive act. You have to trust your instinct, and your instinct will lead you right on the right path.
Right. And I love that point you made about writing not being taught. And that's why even at Beyond the Box, I always tell everyone that, I'm not exactly a creative writing teacher. I say, don't call me a
Hmm.
teacher. It's more like, an
Hmm.
enabler where you're giving them a certain environment to
Yeah,
flourish and giving them
that's right.
opportunities, or, giving fuel to their imagination. But you can't really teach it. It will come from within. You just have to give that kind of opportunities and environment. And I completely agree with that point. So there's another question before we actually go on to the questions from kids, which I have with me, and also a quick, fun rapid fire with you. So this is from Richa. She's asking, do you pick and choose your publishers as a function of what they actually publish, your genre, and your past experience, or would your comfort lie in sticking with one? Also, have you ever felt the need to go to multiple publishing houses if you manage to write much more in a particular year?
Thanks, Richa. But let me tell you that I have been published by 8 publishers, and I haven't stuck
Wow,
to one publisher. Sometimes
that's great.
something hasn't worked out. Sometimes they don't want me. Sometimes I don't want them. Sometimes I feel it's better to be published by a smaller publisher than a big publisher. Sometimes a big publisher supports, like for example, my destination thrillers are published by Bloomsbury. I needed a big publishing house for that, and it's not always in your
Yes,
hands to choose a publisher. I don't think writers are in a position right now to say, hey, I want this publisher. If you're lucky, I guess you can, but really the way publishing works today, I think the ball still isn't in the author's court. It's very much in the publisher's court. So, but having said that, if there's a multiple choice, sometimes I like to pick. Sometimes, and I know with experience now that the publisher and the author fit has to be really good. Otherwise, something along the way lags. The publisher loses interest in the book, or the author loses interest in the marketing, or something
right.
goes wrong. So the author publisher fit has to be very good, and if you're lucky and you can choose, then you need to really make sure that you've chosen the right publisher. And
Correct,
what was
correct.
the other question? And multiple publishing, yes, I've already done that. I am published by various publishers. I've tried, I think,
Mhm.
almost everyone in India, and yeah, it's taught me a lot. All
Yeah,
actually,
I'm sure. And
yeah.
I'm sure the experience with each must be different. And, sometimes
Yes,
you just go by what you're looking for. So, yeah,
I
that.
have degrees of love for different publishers. So my love flourishes for some, and my love is like for
I
some.
know. Of course. Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. We
Yeah,
all have that. Great, great. So, we'll take this one last question before I move on to the
yeah.
question from the kids. So, Natasha is asking, do you have an unfinished book? Now, this is very interesting. I would really want to know about it.
In what way? I've got many unfinished books. I've got like a pile of manuscripts that is not written and are
That
hoping
have
to see the
not been
light of
published.
day.
No, I think she meant to ask this because at times it happens, that there are sometimes these manuscripts lying with us, which we start and we don't really complete, and we want to complete it. It's there in our mind, but we are just not able to, somehow get around to doing so. So yeah, I think she's probably asking from that aspect.
Yes, I have 3 such manuscripts which I really want to write. I don't know when I'm going to write them. I've got so yes, definitely I have at least 3 books like that,
Okay,
which I've
great.
written
So we
three
hope.
three chapters with plot lines ready
Aja.
and everything ready, and I've got them ready, and I just want time to write them, and more inspiration and more energy and more self motivation to write them. Yeah,
Yeah, I hope that happens soon. And so we get to read
thanks.
more books from you. Okay. So we also had a couple of questions from kids of BTB who sent these questions in advance to me. So one of the questions, of course, so I'll just take up those questions from my list here. So one of the questions is, which author have you enjoyed reading the most during your growing years?
I've already said that, Enid Blyton, very
Yes, yes.
much.
So I guess
Yeah,
you
she
know
is
the
like
answer.
she is the one who taught me to love reading, taught me to love writing. She is my spirit mentor. And growing up, of course, Agatha Christie, then Jane Austen, Wilkie Collins, and Victoria Holt, and which others? Lots of them. So I'm basically now the classics. It's all the oldies
Right.
and those who have gone. Yeah, but so yes, I was a huge reader, a very huge reader.
Right, right. Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay, now the next question is a very interesting one, and I think a lot of people actually might be struggling with that. And it says, the child says, I read a lot of books, and I realize that I tend to write in the style of the author I'm currently reading the most. How can I avoid this and have my own unique style of writing?
Yeah, that's a tough one. It's
Yeah.
a tough one because number one, how old is this person who asked this question?
So this is a teen child, 13,
Okay,
14 years
teenager.
old.
Yeah. Okay. So when you start writing at a certain
Mm.
age, I think along the way, you find your voice. And then your voice is so strong, it becomes so strong that nothing influences it. It's like if you make a chapati in a certain way. I'm coming
Right.
back to these cooking examples, okay?
I'm feeling
And you
hungry
make
now.
them, you make them in a certain way, and then you go back after a while and you'll make it the same way. It's not going to be a
True.
perfect round. Okay, you'll have your own identity in that chapati, okay, or whatever
Right.
else you're making, whether it's pasta, whatever. You've got your own unique style of cooking or
Right.
making things or whatever. So similarly, when you finally found your voice, you're going to go back to it time and time again. It won't change if you've really found it. But
Right.
if you're reading something along the way constantly, and then you're trying to write, there is this big risk of that influencing you. So my advice is, if when you start writing, stop reading everything else. You
Okay.
need to focus inwards. You have to,
Mm.
dip into your own writing voice, dip into your own words, your own plots, your own knowledge, your own
Right.
imagination, and create something. You have to let go of all these surplus outside stimuli, and you have to stay away from them. That's the only way to do it, till you really find your voice in such a solid way that nothing can influence it.
Right, right, right. I think that's a great response, especially about
Yeah.
looking inward, and I'm sure with time the child will definitely find
Yes.
his
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are coming to the last fun section of this interview. So this is the quick five section where I'll be asking you five questions and you have to be rapid in your answers.
Oh, okay.
And they'll be mostly related. This is just to know you a little better. So, with respect
Okay.
to your preferences or anything else about you. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. So the first question is Manjiri the filmmaker or Manjiri the author? If you have to choose one, whom will you choose?
The author.
The author, yeah.
Manjiri, the author.
Okay, right. Okay. Now, one book you read recently that impacted you deeply. It may not be very recent, but maybe the one which you
Mm,
remember.
the one that I remember. Oh,
Hmm.
mm, very difficult again. What have I read? Okay, I know
Hmm.
one book that really affected deeply, and that was Call of the Wild. I
Hmm.
forget the author. London, by Jack London, is
Hmm.
it? Anyway,
Yeah,
Call of the
yeah,
Wild. It
yeah.
was about the story of this wolf
Yes,
in
yes,
the
yes.
jungle.
Yeah,
Yes, when I
that
read the
was,
book, I cried. So
yeah.
that's it. I read it a
Okay,
while ago, of course, but that's still
right.
there in my mind. So if you ask me which book,
It's there.
I'm going to say Call of the
It
Wild.
comes to your mind. Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Uh, any book which you read ever from another author which you felt that wish I would have written this book?
Oh. Well, yes, books, all the books by Daphne du Maurier, all of them.
Oh,
Rebecca,
wow.
My
Okay.
Cousin Rachel. These are books. Scapegoat. I feel,
Yes.
I don't know. I feel this connection with her. I feel I would have written that if she just given me a chance. I just love those books, and I feel I wish I had written those. I just wish I had written those.
Right.
Yeah.
Lovely. That's lovely. Okay. Now, is there a genre which you haven't yet touched, but you want to attempt? Like, something which you haven't explored yet, but you think that maybe you should try it?
Well, I thought I wanted to try fantasy and science fiction, and that's why I started
Oh,
writing dystopian. Yeah, so I've written. So
wow.
that's one that
Interesting.
I wanted to. Yeah, so I've written. It's a trilogy of,
Okay.
the Superdome Chronicles, Dome Chronicles, and the first book is the Revolt of the Lamebrin, and there are two more to go. So yes, that's something I'm
That's
experimenting with, and
okay.
yeah, so it's science fiction
Excellent.
and fantasy.
Great. And I'm sure you'll, just ace that as well. Like you ace everything.
Thank you.
Okay. And the
Thanks.
last one in this quick five. So you have to rank in order of preference, and this is just for fun. So
Mm.
one, being locked alone in a library with no access to technology. Second, being trapped alone on an island with no access to books. And third, being in a jail with friends. So this is purely for fun. Of course, we are not sending Manjari anywhere, but yeah, like what would you
Uh,
choose? Your preference, which would be the most
I,
preferred
I think
scenario?
being on an island.
Being on an island. Okay, and
Yes,
then
because then I'll sit
library.
there and write. I'll sit and no, I'll sit and write on the island.
Wow. Yeah, actually, that
Yes.
would be a great place to do that. Yes, you're right.
Yes, I would love to sit on an island all alone, with all stocked, everything there, of course, food and everything. But I don't mind being on an island just to write. I don't need
Oh,
company. I
so
don't
that's
need
your
books.
pick. Okay.
I don't
Okay.
need friends. I don't need anybody. Just me
Amazing.
and
That
my
that's
writing.
that's the best thing, I guess, right? And yes,
Yeah.
so and what next? So basically, that is your preference, and then so the other two options were being locked in a library with no access to
Oh,
technology, or being in the jail with friends.
well, then the second one is the books, being in a
Okay.
library with books, and the third one is with friends. Sorry, friends, I love you all, but but I have to choose, and I think my
Yes,
preference
yes,
is
of
quite
course. And
clear.
it's like I said, it's just for fun's sake to, just
Yeah,
understand you better. So that was
yeah.
great. I think this has been such an enlightening session for me as well, as a writer, as a mentor, and I'm sure for our audience. So thank you so much, everybody who joined. And I'm sure you have learned a
Thank you.
lot today. So please do keep sharing your comments on this live video. And thank you so much for taking our time, Manjari. I'm truly, I think like I said at the beginning of the session as well, that what I really admire the most in you is that, you've achieved so much, but your humility and warmth, I would really take, more than a leaf or two, I think, from your life. So thank you.
Thank you, Anupama. Very kind of you. Thank you for having me as the author of the month. I'm really honored and privileged. And I hope, I want all your kids, all the kids who are listening, and all the authors who are listening, I want to wish them all the best. Write from your heart, write just what you want, and don't worry about anything in the
True.
world. Just write.
Yes. Yes. That's a lovely thought to end this session with. So bye, everybody. And bye, Manjari. Thank you.
Bye.